Do you have continuity or association plan for your business?
Has anyone shared the concept of sustainability with you?
What about the need to protect the rights of minority shareholders?
What are those ingredients germane to having effective meetings?
For these and many more, tune into Corporate Governance Platform every Thursday on MITV, your darling station, on DSTV 255 and UHF 43 at 4:30 p.m.
Corporate Governance Platform is your best medium for informative and educative strategies for the practice of the corporate governance profession.
Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
Hello and thanks for joining your favorite television program, Corporate Governance Platform. The program is proudly sponsored by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals. And we are reaching you live from MITV in Lagos. I am Dr. Tunde Odeyemi, and our conversation this evening is going to be focusing on the role of ethics in business and its influence on corporate governance. And of course, as usual, I have a corporate governance expert as my guest, and is going to be leading the conversation on the role of ethics in business and its influence on corporate brand, Mrs. NKECHI ONYENSO. Mrs. ONYENSO is an experienced governance and administrative professional with an excellent track record of introducing governance structures, turning around small and medium businesses, and building people. She holds a law degree from the University of Ibadan, Oyo State in 2002, where she graduated with a second-class upper and won the university's prize for the best graduating student in labor law. She was called to the Nigerian bar with honors in October 2004 and obtained her qualification as the Chartered Secretary and Administrator from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, United Kingdom, where she again won the prize as the best student in corporate administration in the June 2008 Diet. She became a fellow of the Institute of Certified Public Administrators of England and Wales in 2012, fellow of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, in 2015. She obtained a post-certificate in human rights law and a diploma in law from Queen Mary University of London in 2015, and was awarded a merit in a Masters of Law degree, also from the same university, in 2016. NKECHI has over 2 decades of experience in broadcasting, administration, aviation, security, legal, and corporate governance advisory. She rose to become the first female registrar and CEO of ICSAN in 2015. NKECHI is passionate about issues surrounding women and children and speaks on related topics often. She is currently the MD CEO of Pathfinders International Limited, a company that is represented in Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and of course Liberia, most of the Anglophone West African countries. NKECHI, is a big pleasure to have you on Corporate Governance Platform.
Thank you, Dr. Odeyemi.
And we want to discuss something that is of importance, of course, to our corporate governance viewers, the role of ethics in business and of course its influence on corporate brands. Now, for as many people that want to be part of this program, you can be part of it by asking questions or by making comments, and you can do this by sending a text message to us. Send your text message to 080-2323-1287. I take that again. Only text message for questions or comments to 080-2323-1287. We'll be glad to read your message, and of course you can put your name on it when you send the message. Yeah, NKECHI, we are discussing ethics.
Yeah.
I think it's right for us to start this conversation by asking, what really is ethics?
Okay, putting it in one sentence, it's your moral principles, the principles that guide you morally or in your relation to other people or your environment. When you look at it in a corporate manner, it's an organization doing the right thing, knowing what the right thing is to do and doing it properly, doing it effectively, and doing it not only to tick the box or not only to impress your regulators or government agencies, but because that is what you do as an organization. So basically, it's just doing the right thing, your moral principles to do the right thing, and obey the laws.
Okay, well, 3 things: moral principles to obey the laws, doing the right things.
Yeah.
I think I can get, I think I got the 3. Now, how does ethical culture relate with corporate governance?
Oh, it's a core path of corporate governance. That's why in the 2018 code, in Part B, Principle 24 and 25, it talks about ethics and ethical culture as it relates to doing business, insider trading, confidentiality, passing on corporate information, and things like that. So it's a core path of corporate governance.
Okay, ethics is core part of corporate governance.
Absolutely.
Then how does ethical culture impacts on corporate brand? You know, there's corporate governance on one side,
yes,
then corporate brand.
Okay.
How does ethical culture now impacts on corporate brand?
Okay, so your corporate brand is an interplay of your business practices, your style of leadership, and your corporate strategy. When you bring this all together, it gives a holistic picture of how your company is represented. Now, if your company is represented with high ethical culture, your reputation is very high. And people would want to associate with your company. Now, vice versa, if your company is known to have poor ethical practices, it will affect the reputation your company has. We will look at companies, if we go to America and the UK, you have companies like Enron, you have H&M, you have Google, you have United Airlines. They all had ethical scandals at some point in their organization, and it helped to pull them down. It pulled down the reputation, and you would agree with me, they had worked for years and built up their reputation, but issues with ethical matters brought down the perspective and seriously affected their bottom line. So it's a key part, of this company's brand.
Okay, you actually hit the area where I wanted to go into, and that is talking about the relationship between ethics and reputation of a company. But I will add one to it: the relationship between ethics, the reputation of a company, and investors' confidence. Can you shed more light on that?
Okay, so an investor has money to put in a business because he wants to see profit. Good. He doesn't want to put money that there's initial profit and then it stops, or there's no profit at all. So the investor is looking at the reputation of the organization to take a decision on where will I invest. Of course, they look at other things as well. And when they're looking at the reputation, essentially they're looking at your ethical standards. How well are you doing in terms of doing the right thing, not cutting corners, but doing what you should do as is expected for your industry, for your field. So if you are known, and we now have the social media, which can be good or bad. It can be good if you're doing well, it can be bad because any slip, it goes wild and everybody sees it. So because of the social media impact, we have organizations, of course, all the companies I said that fell, I read about it on social media. I didn't take their annual reports to see it. So investors are watching. So if they want to put money somewhere and they feel that the company has issues with its ethical standards, it affects the investors' confidence and they don't come in to put money there. It happens even in countries. If Nigeria, for example, before people will come in here, when they hear there are security issues, there's this, they hesitate because nobody will put money where they cannot vouch for the ethical standards or the reputation, the good reputation of the organization or the country. The
investors are looking forward to having dividends, interest on their shareholding, right? Yeah. Are you saying that good ethical standard or good ethical culture will enable the investors to achieve this aim? Absolutely,
I am. Initially, they may not see the impact immediately. Okay. Because I was listening to, I watched a playback from, I think, Warren Buffett. He was talking to some students, and he says that honesty may not be the best policy, but it's a good policy. Because he can't guarantee, and nobody can guarantee, that other people in your field will not cut corners to make money. But eventually, with sustainability and with long term, your brand will have a higher value, a better reputation, because those organizations that cut corners, they just need one scandal to just take them down. But if you maintain your ethical standard and it's consistent, and the world can see it's consistent, in the long term it will build your brand, invite investors, it will even make your employees concentrate on the job because they know they're working for a company that has high ethical and integrity standards, so they know that they will not be messed up. So they concentrate on the job, they put in their best, they are more productive. So in the long term, you would reap the reward of being a strong company in terms of ethics.
Okay, I have a question, as a follow-up question to that, but I will ask that question later. I want to talk about the role of the board in all of this. The board is expected or required to have to model a top-down commitment to ethical standard. Yeah. What is the reason for this? And while looking at the role of the board, what is the function or the role of the management in implementing this?
Okay, I would like to make it as practical as possible.
Okay.
As a parent, I'm assuming you're a parent, when you talk to your child, this is the era where your children don't do what you say, they do what you do.
Of course.
Yes.
Leading by example.
Leading by example, that's just it. So as the management or as the board has to set the tone, okay? So when everybody else sees that the management, the CEO, the CFO, the directors are actually following this ethical culture, it will be very easy for everybody else to join the bandwagon. Or when you say something and you do something else, you can't deceive people, you can't deceive all the people all forever. They will see that there's something wrong here, and then you will have issues with ethics, and eventually your company will slip. But when you not only formulate the ethical culture policy, you are also practicing it. And when I say practicing it, in every ramification, even in your personal life. Dr. Odeyemi, there was a time I was in a very strategic meeting, and a lot of things were discussed on security. My husband was into security. And I got home that day and he said to me, so how was work today in NKECHI? And I struggled because what they discussed will affect his business.
Wonderful. Yes,
but it was something that was a confidential meeting. I couldn't tell him. So within 4 days, it was all over the press, whatever we said at the meeting. And he was like, NKECHI, you knew about this, right? And I smiled. I said, well, I know you wouldn't tell me. That's how high your ethical standard needs to be sometimes. Things that are held confidential, you keep it confidential. When everybody else sees that you're keeping to it, it will be easier for everybody else to come on board. Now, how can the management implement it? Yes, you first of all need to formulate your ethical culture. Put it down in writing, okay? Then communicate it to everybody. When I say everybody, not only your top management, not only your supervisors, down to the lowest cadre of workers you have, because sometimes it may even be your driver or your some domestic worker that will misrepresent your company and get the whole company's brand down. Then you have, it's advised to set up a committee, one of the board committees, normally is the nomination and governance committee, to actually monitor, to ensure that the principles that have been set up are actually implemented by the organization. And whatever their findings should be fair. It should be fair to everybody. There are no sacred codes here. Everybody is affected and everybody can be disciplined if it is found that they are working anti-clockwise to what the organization stands for ethically.
Okay. The other question I said I'm going to come into, I think this is the right time to ask that question. Is it difficult or easy to practice good ethical standard? You have said the ethical policy or probably principles should be laid out in writing. Many other organizations out there, they have it in writing, but is it difficult to practice or to comply with what you have written down, or easy to practice good ethical culture?
Yes. Dr. Odeyemi, I want to ask you a question in return. You see people in Nigeria that they take a biscuit, they throw it on the floor, that slip on the floor. These same people will get to another country, they will look for a bin to put that biscuit. Now, is it easy or difficult to do that? It depends on your mindset. It depends on the kind of person you have chosen to become. It depends on your own personal principles. If you're someone that has chosen to be upright and do the right thing, no matter how difficult, in quotes, you will still be able to do it. But if you're someone that struggles to do the right thing anyway, then it's become more difficult. So I guess it comes with the mindset of always wanting to do the right thing. For me, there are so many definitions of corporate governance, but I do one that I share with my children. I say corporate governance, simply put to me, is doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Depends, doesn't matter where you are, who is watching, or in what area. My children are still in school, they're not working, but if that is your mentality, if that is the principle you've grown up with, it will be easy for you to apply it in your corporate life. So it can be difficult if you're not somebody that normally does the right thing. But if you're somebody that desires to always do the right thing because of the impact it will have not only on your life or your family, but the society in general. It will be easy for you to do. And yes, you may have to make some sacrifices, but it will be worth it.
Okay, you may have to make some sacrifices, but it is good to always do the right thing.
Absolutely.
Because it is the right thing to do.
Yes.
Okay, if you are just joining us, it's Corporate Governance Platform. The program is sponsored by ICSAN, the Hub of Governance Professionals, and we are beaming live from MITV in Lagos. Of course, we are discussing the role of ethics in business and its influence on corporate brand. And I have a very distinguished fellow of ICSAN here, NKECHI, blowing hot on the role of ethics. I would like to go to the next question. I want to make reference to the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance.
Okay.
Now, the code provides that a company's code of business conduct and business ethics should provide, among other things, that directors should not make improper or prejudicial use of information acquired as directors, and not disclose non-public information except where disclosure is authorized or legally mandated.
Yes.
That is a provision from the Code of Corporate Governance.
Yes.
Now, what is the significance of this code, of this particular provision?
It's to help to check when you have disclosure of materials or information about a company that is not yet made public. Material disclosure. It's not yet made public. It's actually a criminal offense to do that. And people use that information to buy or to trade or to benefit themselves in any way. As a director, you have a fiduciary duty to the company, and this fiduciary duty covers your duty of care, your duty of loyalty, your duty of skills, and your duty of diligence. So in line with these duties, you're expected at all times to carry information that you happen to have because you're opportune to be in top management or in board of an organization with utmost care, and not to give out this information before it is publicly allowed to do so, because it can lead to what they call insider trading, which again is contained in is part of the reasons why you even have the ethics in the first place, and it can be an offense, a criminal offense.
And one of the reasons why you did not tell your husband the outcome of that meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, what are the consequences if a director of an organization misuse that opportunity and make a disclosure? What are the consequences?
It may put his company in a bad sense, because once your company is known to be disclosing confidential, non-disclosed, not to be disclosed information, it shows that your ethical standards as an organization is poor, and it will bring down your reputation. Because once it comes out that that's what you do in your organization, it will bring down the reputation of your organization, and therefore put away investors' confidence and investment in your organization. Again, as I said, it can also lead to criminal charges against you if you trade with information, or you tell your family members or relations to trade with information that is not yet made public to everybody else. Because, you know, it should be a fair playing field. Everybody should have the same opportunity. It doesn't matter if the information comes out by 12 and then by 12:01 you tell everybody. As far as the information has come out, then it's okay to share. But if it hasn't come out and by 11:59 you tell somebody, then you have contravened the requirements of this principle.
Does it also have criminal tendencies if the information that is shared does not have personal benefits to the director?
If it doesn't have personal benefits to the director, but it's the director's relations or related party benefits from it, or any other person benefits from it, and the director, in fact, willingly or unwillingly, once that information goes out and somebody has benefited, then it has criminal tendencies or significance to it.
Okay, should a director serve in a competing company even after the director has made disclosure to the board? And if a director does that, what are the risks to the company?
The code advises not to serve in a competing company for many reasons, some of which are because of confidentiality issues. You have conflict of interest issues, you have issues of diversion of corporate opportunities, you have divulgence of corporate information. These are some of the things that can come up when you serve in a competing board. And remember, as a director, you have that fiduciary duty of loyalty, which means you should be steadfast, trustworthy, transparent, and be an ally to the company. You can't be an ally to two companies working in the same field. You have to have one master. Do you understand? So it's better you don't sit on the board of competing organizations. That's advised at the corporate governance code.
Good. Honesty, integrity, fairness, and loyalty. These 4 principles are related to ethics. Can you explain these principles in relation to corporate governance?
Okay. So you have honesty, integrity,
fairness, and loyalty.
These 4 principles are also pillars of corporate governance. When you look at honesty and integrity, essentially when a company has or is known to have a high level of this, it helps to actually make leadership easy. It promotes a positive working culture. It helps to encourage high ethical practices, and it helps to bring diversity to the board. You and I know of an organization in this country that had a major ethical scandal, a very big brand that had a major ethical standard, and they just had to bring on board the chairman of board, a man that the Nigerians described as a man of high integrity. And within a few years, they've turned around that company, and people are almost forgetting that they had a scandal. So when you are associated, you as an organization or as an individual is known to be somebody with the principles of integrity and honesty, it makes things work easier. When you talk about fairness, you talk about equality. When the people that work with you, your stakeholders, including your employees, see that there's equality, there's fairness, people are not judged on their face or their color or their religion. They're judged based on the work they do. So they are fair in remuneration, they are fair in bonuses, they are fair in giving allowances, they are fair in giving leave. It also helps to promote the principles of corporate governance, because people would know that there's equality here. And then the last one was loyalty. I have spoken about that earlier on. So where you're loyal, you're trustworthy, you're transparent. You show people the way what you see is what you get. And that's the key of corporate governance, to tell people, carry them along as you go along, and you're accountable for your actions. So these 4 are principles and ethics, and also pillars of corporate governance. There's a close relationship.
Okay, I'm itching to read this question from Daniel. Daniel asked the question. Thank you, madam, for your brief talk on ethics. But why is it difficult for Nigerian companies to be ethical? They are not ethical to employees, they are not ethical to customers, they are not ethical to other stakeholders. That is a question from Daniel.
Daniel, I hope it's not a personal perspective, because there are some companies in Nigeria that actually have very high ethical standards and are recognized internationally. I can think of at least 10 off my hand. Of course, there's always an exception to every rule, so we have some that are different. But that's why we have the Corporate Governance School, to help to bring all companies aboard, so they are on board, so that we can have a standard of corporate governance for all our organizations. So Nigeria is getting there, Daniel.
Okay, my own question. What is the relationship between ethics and social responsibility?
Okay, so social responsibility essentially is the ethical theory that has to do with your accountability in terms of your civic responsibility. It has to do with balancing what you do, your profit, with the environment in which you operate. Corporately, is balancing it with the legal, social, environmental laws of the organization. In the past, in the 1970s, again, I read widely. So there was this article I came upon, 1970, I think it was by Friedman, a man called Friedman. Then he says, a company's only social responsibility is to make profit. We've come a long way from that.
Okay, Friedman Miles.
Yes. It's now not only to make profit. In addition to making profit, we want to know, how did you make that profit? What did you do? You remember there was a time that a particular clothing line suffered because there was this thing on social media that they use child labor to make it.
Underage.
To make it. So they had to do extensive media coverage to say, no, we don't, everybody that we use. So the media goes a long way, and that affects your social response, how you're seen as a social responsible organization also affects your reputation, also affects your customer, investors' confidence in your organization. You have some big labels that once they have issues with social responsibility, you know what's happening in I don't want to call it the eastern part of the country. We have some organizations that they say, you take our oil and you pollute our land. So that causes a lot of problems. So we are not only interested in how well you make money. Yes, it can be your goal, but we also want to know what you do to make that money. Do you cut corners? Do you destroy the environment in which you work. And this, you have to balance all these expectations of your stakeholders. We even moved a little further, because then stakeholders were only those that were directly connected or affected to your organization. Now the stakeholder field is wider. Anybody in that community, anybody in that environment is your stakeholder, even if they don't have a single share in your organization. If your work there will impair them in any way, they are your stakeholders, and you have to consider them when you're working in that environment.
So for you to be ethical, you have to be socially responsible.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, what then will happen if ethical standard is at variance with profitability of the company?
It goes back to what I said. Corporate governance is doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. So even if you're not making as much money as the next man that's cutting corners, you should still stand and do the right thing.
And people will think you don't know how to do the business.
Yes, but in the long run, they will see how you sustained yourself, because work is not only about profit, it's also about sustainability. The organization I work with now is about 40 years old. It has stayed that long because of having high ethical practices. If you cut corners now, you make money now, more money now. But in the end, you will suffer for it, because if there's a single slip from your organization, you will lose all that money, and it will take you years to rebuild it back. So even if it pinches, hold on, still stand by what you believe in, and still do what is right, because that's the best way to go.
Is good ethical culture also beneficial to the public sector? We've been talking about companies. Public sector, should they have good ethical culture?
Absolutely. The code,
will it be beneficial to them?
It will be beneficial to them. The code you're talking about applies to both the public and the private sector, even though it's only the private sector now that the code is focusing on, but the scope includes the public sector. Because public servants have a higher level of responsibility, because they are not only spending a company's funds, they are spending citizens' tax. So they have a higher level of responsibility, professionality, and effectiveness that's required of them. And that is what is even contained in the, I think, is it the Civil Service Act or Civil Service Code? Yes, they have a Civil Service Code that actually states out all the ethical practices that public servants should practice. So yes, it should be beneficial to them.
It should be beneficial to them.
It will be beneficial to them, yes.
And lastly, because of my time, what advice do you have for both private and public sectors of our economy on how to entrench good corporate culture in their practice?
My advice is, first of all, formulate what works for your organization.
Okay.
And then let there be massive media coverage for let everybody be aware. Let everybody be on the bandwagon. Let it become your company's culture, part of your company's culture. So if they wake anybody up from sleep, they can say, this is what we can do in this organization, this is not what we can do. And let it start from the top.
Okay. So let your ethical culture principles be written down. Of course, let it start from the top and let it become a culture of the organization. Mrs. NKECHI ONYENSO, FCIS, thank you very much for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure.
And for sharing your thoughts on the role of ethics. And for all our viewers out there, we'd like to thank you for being part of the show. And Daniel, for sending that text message, thank you very much. I am Tunde Odeyemi, and on behalf of my producer, Adegboye Galabiro, and of course the technical director, David Adepoju, and of course the camera crew, I'd like to say thank you and bye for now.
Do you have continuity or association plan for your business?
Has anyone shared the concept of sustainability with you?
What about the need to protect the rights of minority shareholders?
What are those ingredients germane to having effective meetings?
For these and many more, tune into Corporate Governance Platform every Thursday on MITV, your darling station, on DSTV 255 and UHF 43 at 4:30 p.m.
Corporate Governance Platform is your best medium for informative and educative strategies for the practice of the corporate governance profession.
Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.